Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here, welcome back to the railway and welcome to another review. Today I'm going to be looking at a coach and this time it's from Bachmann. It's only recently that I've really started to look at a few more coaches in my reviews, and I've really enjoyed doing it so far. I mean, obviously it's just more models to talk about, which is awesome, and it's also been a really good way of just seeing a bit more variety of different coaching. So today I'm carrying on that theme with this, the Bachmann General Utility Van. Now this is not a coach that obviously you're going to make up an entire train with, but instead you can use a van like this to supplement an existing train, just to add a little bit of variety to an existing rake of coaches, let's say. And also Bachmann have produced utility vans like this in a good number of different liveries from different eras, so it's really quite a versatile van, and I can see quite a lot of people making good use of them, if they are any good, and that's what we're going to find out today. Because, as you probably won't be surprised to learn, this is quite an expensive item. The RRP for this thing is £59.95, so at the RRP, an awful lot of money. But the good news is these are sold for quite a bit cheaper than the RRP in most cases. In fact, I bought this thing from the model centre for much less, at £24.48, which I think is much more reasonable. Sounds actually more or less just right for something like this, if the quality and the level of detail is good. But let's see if it is. Let's get this out and let's take a look. And if you're interested in getting one of these, or perhaps seeing the different versions of this that Bachmann have produced, I'll pop some affiliate links down in the description. But let's take a look and see exactly what I've got here. So let me show you the end of the box. The product code for mine is 39-273. It is a BR Mark 1 GUV, which stands for General Utility Van, and it is in the Southern Railway green. And that is something that I had a question for you guys about. Because if this is a Mark 1, then it's post-nationalisation, right? So how can it be in Southern Railway green? If you know, please comment down below. Is it just that it looks like the same colour that the Southern Railway used, so they've called it Southern Railway green? Is it a preservation thing, perhaps? Was there a van like this that was just painted into Southern colours? Is it just something that Bachmann thought would look cool, so they did it? I don't know. If you know, let me know. But what I'm thinking is I've got a lot of Southern Railway coaches, so even if it's not intended as a preservation vehicle, I might pretend that it is, and then I can use it with all my Southern trains, again, just to supplement them. So yeah, nothing very much to see on the rest of the box. So for the first time, I'm going to get this out and see what this is like. Not too sure about the age of this model. I'm not sure when Bachmann tooled it. Obviously, it's still being sold today, so you'd expect it to be relatively modern and high in standards. And usually things like this are from Bachmann. Anyway, I've noticed we've got some sort of accessories in here, so let's take a look and see what we've got here. So first of all, an alternative coupling. Only one, mind you. But this is a simple coupling which allows you to permanently couple two coaches together, only two, and it looks a bit more, well, in fact a lot more realistic than the tension locks. And then what else have we got here? I think they might also be couplings. Yeah, they're just cosmetic ones though, knuckle couplers by the looks of things. Okay, so a few different options there, but would you only need one of those close couplings? Wouldn't it be nicer and more flexible to have two, one for each end? I guess, strictly speaking, you would only need one, assuming that every other coach you want to use with it also comes with one. Anyway, let's take a look at this then. So there's our first look, and it's very definitely in the Southern green. It's immediately recognisable, isn't it? Right, let's see what this thing weighs. All right, so I think the weight feels fairly standard, so no major issue there. I'll weigh it in a second. And here is the utility van. I'm a bit hesitant to call this a coach because I guess you wouldn't really have people riding on it, but whatever, it's a Mark 1. And yeah, this looks great, doesn't it? It seems very, very high quality. The finish looks good. I can notice that straight away. Level of detail looks fantastic. We'll take a closer look at that in just a second. I noticed that this also has kinematic couplings like that, well, like those Hornby Collet coaches I looked at. But look how smooth these are. I mean, the bogies turn incredibly freely, the couplings move incredibly easily, which means they're really not going to be adding much drag to this. So yeah, Hornby, if you're watching, if you want to overcomplicate things, take a leaf out of Bachmann's book and do it so that it actually works well. You see that? What a difference. Anyway, here's a little bit of background on the Mark 1s and the GUVs, and then we'll take a much closer look at this model. So as you probably know, the British Railways Mark 1 coaching stock was introduced in 1951, shortly after nationalisation, as a standard design of railway carriages intended to replace the old designs from the Big Four, or even from the pre-grouping, pre-1923 era. The GUV, or General Utility Van, was built between 1956 and 1960, over which time an amazing 907 examples were built for transporting of mail and parcels. 907, that seems crazy. Despite their age now, some vans are still in use today, which I think is equally amazing, and many others remain preserved on various heritage railways. So there it is, a close look at the Bachmann GUV, and as you can probably tell, this is a perfectly good model. It seems to be of good quality, the level of detail seems to be excellent, generally not too much to complain about here. It is noticeably a simpler and lighter model than the Hornby Collet coaches I looked at last time, which of course makes the RRP quite preposterous if you ask me, but that's nearly always the case, isn't it? So hardly any point mentioning it, except I do repeatedly. Apologies. Other channels are available if this is not your cup of tea. But generally, if you can find this for less than the RRP, as I did, then there's really not too much of a problem here. It seems to be absolutely fine. It weighs 118 grams, which is a little bit less than the Collet coaches from last time, which were at 126 grams, and it is mainly plastic, the chassis, the body, all made of plastic, but of course the weight isn't much of a complaint here because it's rolling stock, and in fact if it was too heavy, that would count against it, I suppose. So I don't think the weight is a problem, it's about right, certainly doesn't seem to be too light to the point where it's going to be derailing. The paintwork is obviously quite simple, so no major expense there, but what is here has been done quite well. Quite like the finish, yeah, it seems to be a fair satin finish. If anything, I think they could have gone a bit further with that because the smooth-sided rolling stock like this in real life does tend to look quite shiny in person, doesn't it? But it is a good finish, I would say, not too plasticky. And there is a fair bit of tampo printed detail on here as well. You've got the GUV, that's the running number, Southern Region, as you can see. Little bit of information, it's got the length, the width, the weights and everything. Little bit of printed detail on the chassis or the sole bar. What's that say? Emergency lighting point. Alright, so I guess that's fairly self-explanatory. There's also a weird sort of lighter green colour which is noticeable around certain moulded parts such as the doors and the grills. I don't know if this is intentional or not, but I think it actually looks quite good. It helps these parts to stand out even though they are just moulded parts. Just seems to make them look a bit more realistic somehow. So if it is intentional, then great, good idea. If not, we'll see if you can do it again, Bachmann. Quite like the interesting effect there. In terms of the level of detail then, it is relatively basic in that the door handles and such, those are just part of the moulding and they've been decorated. But again, they've been decorated quite precisely so that it's not going to catch your eye as a moulded detail. It looks perfectly good. And at least the grab rails around the doors, these are, I believe, separately fitted and made of wire, which looks good. The bogie detail is quite impressive as well, and again this has been done to a much higher standard than on the Hornby Collet coaches. They're simpler bogies in that they have less separately fitted parts on them, I suppose, which means that the staff at the factory haven't had to go through the headache of gluing tiny parts onto them, and so there is no visible glue on these bogies, and yet the moulded detail is really, really good. There's lots and lots of detail here, very, very fine, and so it looks excellent. And I guess while we're looking at the bogies, we'll look at the underframe because this is one of the more complex areas of the model. You've got the separately fitted turning wheel there, which is represented. You've got quite complex brake rigging underneath here as well, including the cylinders here, which actuate the brakes. You've got one of those on both sides. Full underframe supports, and those are made of plastic, but they're kind of out of reach, luckily, on this design, so you're not going to be damaging them. And then you've also got the, I think this is the little generator here for lighting and whatnot. That's quite a nice little piece as well. Another relatively complex area are the ends of the van. Look at the moulded detail here. I particularly like these. You see these little chains? Quite a lot of these chains, not separately fitted, but the fidelity and the crispness in the moulding there is amazing. All of this is moulded except for, I think, the lamp brackets here, and those are separately fitted, which is quite a nice touch. One slight disappointment though is the buffers. These are just, I think, plastic buffers, and they're unsprung as well. I think that's a pity at this price. Yeah, I really thought this was a higher spec model than that, but you know, it's not that important. It's just a nice flashy feature that would have been nice to have seen, I think. Another flashy feature that I suspect is missing is the interior. Now, again, this is not a big deal because you can't really see inside the van, and the fact that I'm not 100% sure that there's no interior just goes to show how little it matters. But yeah, it would have been really cool to see a little bit of detail inside there, maybe some racks with parcels on them or whatever, but nothing like that has been done. Doesn't matter at all, but again, if I'd have spotted something inside there, I would have been more inclined to say that this was a better value model. But at least the windows have this sort of bar effect printed onto them. I think it is just printed, but at least this way it looks nice and fine. The roof, I believe, is separately fitted. Very, very subtle though. I mean, the gap between roof and body is very fine. But it also means that the roof can be painted separately so that you have a perfect line here, perfect join between the southern green and the grey of the roof. So that's awesome, and it's also got the standard roof furniture up on top. All of this moulded, nothing too remarkable, but it all looks just the job, as you can see. Which I think pretty much brings us to the end of it. It's just fine, isn't it? There's nothing remarkably excellent about it, but there's also nothing that particularly stands out as being poor quality or insufficient. So yeah, it's absolutely fine if you can get it for a good price like I did. I mean, for 25 quid, it's just the job. I wouldn't change a thing about it, really. Perhaps if you paid a lot more, like some people obviously are, given the RRP, then yeah, maybe you would be a bit disappointed in this. It does leave a bit to be desired at the higher prices. But that's it for the level of detail. Nice quality van, very well put together, as you'll have been able to see. So let's get it down onto the track. Very interested to see how its performance compares against those Colic coaches. Will there be less drag? Will it be more free rolling? Less inclined to derail? I think probably so. Let's find out. Alright, so here is my performance test setup. I've picked out one of my favourite BRX Southern locomotives, and this is Camelford, which is a West Country class. Very nice livery. And to go alongside the Bachmann utility van, I've got my rake of Hornby Southern coaches, which are similarly modern and with similar couplings. Now, the van, I would say, is fairly free rolling. It's not remarkably free or anything, but I wouldn't call it stiff either, luckily. Didn't fare that great on the Gordon's Hill rolling test, didn't pick up an awful amount of speed, and because of that kinematic coupling design that actuates with the bogies, yes, the curve at the bottom was enough to zap the last of the speed out of this. However, it didn't seem to grind to a halt quite like the Hornby Colic ones did, so yeah, it's definitely not as bad. Hopefully it won't derail. The gauging is fine as well, 14.2 to 14.3 millimeters, quite reliably across each of its axles, which is quite close to the standard. And I think with that, the only other thing to do is to see if it couples properly and see how it behaves as part of a train. So let's give this a go. West Country class coupling. Alright, seems like a perfect coupling. Let's just show that. There we go, yeah, they're coupled. Let's see how it handles the other Hornby coach couplings. Ooh, bit of a clonk there. I was faffing with the camera as it coupled. So there we go, that's what it looks like with the rest of the train. The colour matching between the Hornby and the Bachmann stock, actually it's not that far off, is it? I think the Bachmann is slightly darker and the finish is slightly better on the Bachmann. But you can certainly put those together, can't you, and it look decent. So I'm actually really quite pleased with that. Okay, let's get this going then. Let's set it off at around 50 speed, and we'll see how the utility van handles the layout as part of a train. All right, here we go. All right, here we go. Good old Camelford. Okay, so that's a good sign, isn't it? Handle the tight curves, kinematic couplings seem to be working nice and smoothly. No derailment caused. So I think that pretty much seals the deal. It is a good performing coach. Not the freest in the world, but it's not causing so much drag that it's going to start affecting your locos massively. And it seems to perform exactly as it should. So overall, I'm going to go ahead and say this is a pretty decent coach. It is pretty light on features, particularly given the RRP, so I don't think you're going to get your money's worth if you pay the RRP, or even 10 to 15% down from the RRP. This is definitely something you want to buy in a sale or something if you're going to buy it, but the quality is definitely good, the level of detail is adequate if not outstanding, and as you can see there's no real way to fault the performance. The kinematic couplings do well, and obviously they will allow some nice close coupling, so if you care about that, this model does that pretty well, I would say. And at the end of the day, it looks great, so what more could you ask for? Yeah, really pleased with this, and what's more, it looks fantastic coupled to my existing rake of Southern coaches. For me, this is just the job. Nice expansion to the rake of coaches, and it looks great in there as well. Let's have some ratings then for the lovely Bachmann General Utility Van. Do bear in mind, this is not a high-spec coach, really. I suspect that the design and the tooling for this van dates back a number of years, and that is reflected in the model. Bit confused as to why it's not more reflected in the price, but like I say, at the reduced price, it's okay. So the level of detail I've given 3 stars. It's not quite up to modern standards, I would say, but the decoration certainly is. The finish is very good. The underframe in particular seems to be absolutely fine, but it is missing a few more modern features, such as the sprung buffers. An interior, that would have been really cool. I know a little pointless, but cool nevertheless. And quite a bit of the detailing is just moulded rather than separately fitted, as you might expect it to be today. So it's a 3-star overall, though it looks great. Performance can't really be faulted, a little bit sticky on curves due to the coupling mechanism, but at least it doesn't cause derailments, and it is by no means a stiff rolling coach or van. So performance I can't really fault, absolutely fine. The quality generally is really good. I've given it 4-star. The build quality is really high, the decoration is all precise, no glue or anything like that on it. I think it's really just the fact that this is quite a plasticky item that I've knocked off 1 star. A bit more die cast would have made it much higher quality and perhaps a little bit more worth what it cost. But then again, the weight is not a problem, I don't think, with this. Value for money then, I think at £60, which is the RRP, or £59.95 more specifically, I think that's far too expensive for what this is. It's quite a basic item and it shows. However, for the price I paid, £24.48, for a high quality piece of rolling stock with a fairly decent level of detail, I think it's an absolute bargain. I would have given it 5-star had that been the RRP. So I've split the difference, I've given it 3.5. The value is fine, but don't overpay for this because, like I say, I think it's quite an old item. Overall then, that is 7.19 out of 10 as the final score. Let's pop that into the logbook then, and it is 5th place above the Rapido SECR wagon and below the Oxford Pilchard. So that's it then, folks. That was my review of the Bachmann General Utility Van. All sorts of different versions of this van available from Bachmann in all sorts of different liveries. So if you just want to supplement an existing rake of coaches, this is a really good way to do it. Provided you can find it for the right price, it's a fine piece of rolling stock. It works exactly as it should, high quality, absolutely fantastic. So well done, Bachmann, nice product, really, really well put together, nice design as well. Yeah, everything works as it should. Can't really fault it. So that was pleasant. What a nice conclusion. And with that, I'll say thank you for watching, and I will see you very, very soon for some more videos. All right, cheers everybody, take care.